Good day, everyone. I am teacher Sulin Rodrigues. I hope all of you are fine and keeping in good health by the grace of God. We will be studying Unit 2, Chapter 3, titled Connecting the Dots by Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is the pioneer of microcomputers and the CEO and co-founder of Apple Industries. The phrase connecting the dots means to make a connection or to form links that would enable you to get a fuller or a more complete understanding of a situation or an experience. In this lesson, Steve Jobs does not talk much about computers. Instead, he gets more philosophical and using these three experiences from his very own life, he tries to tell the reader that you cannot analyze success or failure in life on the basis of a solitary experience. But you can do so only on the basis of a series of experiences which are connected to one another. I have divided the lesson into three parts based on the three stories that are narrated by Steve Jobs. I will now read the first story. Connecting the Dots by Steve Jobs. Today, I want to tell you three stories from my life. That's it. Just three stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months before I really quit. Looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked interesting. The phrase dropped out of means discontinued. Drop in means, in this context, come in as a visiting student. In India, you would call it attending a correspondence course. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Here's one example. Reed College offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Because I had to take a calligraphy class, I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about what makes great typography great. The meaning of the word dorm is dormitory. A dormitory is a big room that is shared by many people with facilities to sleep in. Stumbled into is a phrase which means came upon by accident or discovered by accident. Intuition means instinct. Calligraphy is different styles in handwriting or different styles in artistic handwriting. Serif and sans serif are projection styles of letters, while the word typefaces means the typing or the printing of letters and words. 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me and we designed it all into the Mac. If I had never dropped in on that course in college, the Mac would never have had multiple typefaces or, for that matter, even proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows copied Mac, it's likely no personal computer would have them. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Mac refers to the Macintosh computer. Proportionally spaced fonts are equal spacing between the letters and words. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in some things: your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life. Gut over here refers to instinct or your sixth sense, which points you in the correct direction or gives you a warning when you're doing something wrong. Karma is a philosophy wherein it is understood that whatever good you do will come back to you. And if you do bad, that bad also returns to you. That means it believes that the good that you do rewards you and the bad that you do punishes you. I will now explain this first part of the lesson or the first story of this lesson. The first story deals with how the decisions taken by Steve Jobs during those years when he was in college proved to be useful or had an impact on things that happened in his life later on. He decided to drop out of college, but continued for some time at least as a visiting student, and then completely discontinued his college studies. This enabled him to attend those lectures or those classes that looked interesting. Now, there was the good side and the bad side of this decision that he took. The inconveniences or the disadvantages that he faced because he was not a regular student was that he could not avail of the college dormitory facilities or the cafeteria facilities. So he had to come up with a solution to these problems. So what he did was he slept on the floor in his friends' rooms and he sold empty Coke bottles for which he got 5 cents per bottle. With that money that he collected, he would buy food. Also, he found out in his free time that food would be distributed by people at the Hare Krishna temple. So once a week, he would walk 7 miles to that temple to get food. And this is how he managed that difficult situation. The advantage was that he got a lot of free time, which he spent either attending some lectures which he found interesting, or he spent his time in finding out about a lot of things. And these things that he learned proved to be very valuable later on in life. Steve Jobs goes on to give an example of this. One of the changes he learned, or one of the things that he learned, was calligraphy. And this came in handy when he had to install this feature of different types of fonts in the Macintosh computers that he was designing. Because he could install this feature into this new microcomputers, the printed matter began looking much neater and attractive. He goes on to say that since Windows only copied the software that was installed in the Macintosh computers, no one else would have ever thought of installing this feature into computers. He explains that at that time when he took all these decisions, he didn't realize what kind of an impact it would have on his future life. It is only 10 years later that he realized that these decisions were very wise ones, or these were the good decisions that he took in his life at that time when he was studying in college. He tells the reader that when you look at the future, you have no idea how it will shape up or which decisions will have the maximum impact on your future. He says that you just have to have implicit faith in your instinct, in your gut feeling, in the fact that life is good, and in the fact that the sacrifices you make or the good that you do will always pay you rich dividends, that you will get good rewards in life for the good that you do. I will now read the second story. My second story is about love and loss. I found what I loved to do early in life was, that is, Steve Wozniak and I started Apple when I was 20. In 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company. And then I got fired. It was devastating. Steve Wozniak was the co-founder of Apple. That is, he was Steve Jobs' partner. Got fired means was removed from his job or lost his job. Devastating means suffered a great setback or suffered a great shock. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. And so I decided to start over. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. The phrase began to dawn on means began to realize. To start over means to begin all over again or to start afresh. Heaviness in this context means the responsibility of or the burden of. Lightness in this context refers to enthusiasm. During the next 5 years, I started a company, Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar is now the world's most successful animation studio. Apple bought Next. I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. And Lauren and I have a wonderful family together. Next is a software company developed by Steve Jobs. Pixar is an animation company, deals with animation and graphics using computer technology. The phrase at the heart of means it's at the center of, which means it is the most important thing or the most important part of. Renaissance means rebirth or revival or starting all over again. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. The phrase hits you in the head with a brick means deals a great shock or gives you a great setback. Don't settle means don't accept defeat. I will now explain the second part of the lesson. The second story deals with the next phase of Steve Jobs' life and the things that happened at this time. Year two, there were good things and bad things that happened to him. When he was around 20, he got together with Steve Wozniak and they started Apple in a garage. And this company grew into a giant of an industry worth $2 billion within a very short span of just 10 years. But just when things were looking up and were looking really good for Steve Jobs, he was dealt with a severe blow when he was removed from Apple. He was fired from his job. He was naturally extremely distressed and devastated and broken down by this incident. But then he realized that he still had a lot of knowledge about microcomputers. And with the free time that he now got, he could begin all over again. Therefore, he began the next phase of his life in spite of this setback because he still loved what he was doing in the world of computer technology. Here he talks about how he felt. He says that he was completely devastated, that he had an experience which completely broke him down. But this devastation was now replaced by enthusiasm. And because he looked at the situation from a different perspective, he could now begin creating a lot of new technology, better technology. So, what actually started out as a setback, as a failure, proved to be very beneficial to him. Now, at double the time, that is within the next 5 years, he developed his own software company named Next, which did so well that when he returned to Apple, His company next began providing the software and the technology that Apple needed. He also started another company which began using computer technology in the world of animation and graphics. And the name of that company is Pixar, which has gone on to become the world's most successful animation company. And he could also focus on family life. He says that he could begin a new phase in his life with his wife Lauren by his side. Even though he lost his friend and his partner, Steve Wozniak, because of this incident that had happened. Steve Jobs says that what he learned from this phase of his life and from this devastating experience was that setbacks shouldn't pull you down. As long as you love what you are doing, you will always keep on succeeding and rising because you like what you are doing. And when you like something, it stimulates your mind to do better. So he says, keep trying in spite of failures and don't lose hope or accept defeat because you'd never know how that setback can turn into something very beneficial. I will now read the third story. My third story is about death. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a biopsy. It turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery and I'm fine now. The word diagnosed comes from the word diagnosis, which means identifying the nature and the cause of an illness. The phrase get one's affairs in order means get everything well organized. Biopsy means removal of a sample of tissue for examination purpose. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's dream. Through this story, Steve Jobs wants to tell us that life is unpredictable and should not be taken for granted. Because if suddenly the time that has been given to you is shortened, you will regret not using your time well. And you may even not have the opportunity, or you may not be able to accomplish whatever you wanted to achieve within that limited span of time that is now left to you. Therefore, you must make good use of your time. We come to the concluding part of this lesson. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. Dogma is a set of beliefs held by people or formed by people which everyone in society is expected to follow. Drown out means cut off or prevent or prohibit. Inner voice refers to your instinct, your sixth sense, or your gut feeling. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Intuition again means instinct. In this part of the lesson, Steve Jobs tells the reader that you should not let others tell you what to do. You should listen to your own instinct because it subconsciously is aware about what kind of a person you are and therefore is a good indicator and helps you to know what you need to do in order to achieve your aims and fulfill your dreams. Very often people listen to others and do what others advise them to do because they are not brave enough to follow their dreams or they are scared to follow their instinct. They are scared of failure. So, like cowards, they listen to others so that if things go wrong, they can blame others for their failures. But a brave person is not scared to take on the responsibility of his or her own decisions or even the consequences and failures that that person would have to face on account of the decision that he made or took. So Steve Jobs is trying to tell the reader this, that be brave and boldly decide things for yourself because you have your instinct to guide you. I will now read the concluding part of this lesson. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called The Whole Earth Catalog. In the final issue, on the back cover, they put a photograph of an early morning country road. Beneath it were the words, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It was their farewell message as they signed off. I have always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Final issue means the last issue of a magazine or an article. Publication would be either a newspaper or an article or a periodical or a magazine that is published. The phrase "stay hungry" in this context means always keep wanting for something better. And the phrase "stay foolish" means keep an open mind. Don't get complacent. Don't think that you know everything. Try learning more and more things. Or simply be curious. Steve Jobs over here says that he wants to have this hunger to do better and better in life and not become complacent thinking that he has achieved everything or he knows everything. He tells the reader to become like he wants to become and to always be in search for something better and something new. With this, I come to the end of this beautiful lesson. This is an assignment based on pages 65 and 67 of your textbook. It includes writing skills, that is, a formal letter, vocabulary, which would include idioms, and grammar, which includes tenses and interchange, identification of tenses and interchange of tenses. Kindly make sure that you do this in your files, in your grammar book, and in the 100 pages book that you are maintaining for prose. Thank you.